I'll tell you two things. It's pretty ironic. I was on the Summit cruise like 4 weeks ago with Richard Branson and Russell Simmons and a whole bunch of the guys that founded Facebook with all the money. And then one day it was at nighttime. It was like 10 o'clock, and I'm just sitting in like the little Starbucks thing in the cruise ship. And I asked the gentleman's name. He says, Peter. I said, where are you from? LA. What do you do? We founded the X Prize. I'm like, you founded the X Prize? Wow. So Peter is just a very accomplished entrepreneur. So 2 weeks ago, one of my good friends, Rich Strombach, put together a mastermind about 2 years ago. And Richard Branson and the founders of Google and Vinod Khosla, the famous venture capitalist, and Al Gore and Prime Minister Blair all showed up about the environment. Anyway, fast forward, so 3-4 weeks ago, my friend Rich, I said, when are you coming to LA? He goes, I'm supposed to come out, this is like 2 weeks ago. He goes, I'm coming out for a party on Friday night. I'm like, great, let's connect up. And he goes, well, he sends me this invitation. I said, well, is there any way I can help? He goes, yeah. He goes, you can invite people. I go, okay, well, what's the criteria? What kind of party is it? He goes, well, do not invite anyone that does not have a net worth of under $300 million. I said, how much? He goes, $300 million. I said, well, that's going to eliminate most people. So I swear to God, I got invited to the party. I literally emailed that morning 10 billionaires. Jeff Bezos, there's a few other billionaires that I knew obviously had over $300 million net worth. Long story short, they said if I could bring someone, I could go to the party. And I actually emailed Peter Diamandis, and he goes, actually, I founded this whole thing years ago. So I just want to read his bio real fast. By the way, out of this party of about 30 people, maybe 25, it was at Dennis Tito's house. Dennis Tito, the gentleman, was the first citizen private to go to space. Right now, it's $50 million to go to space. Richard Branson is dropping the cost to about $150,000. But these guys are all really innovative in the world of space exploration. But check this out. He's the international leader in the Commerce Space Arena X Prize Foundation, having founded and run many of the leading entrepreneurial companies in this sector. Peter also serves as the CEO of Zero Gravity Corporation, a commercial space company developing. That's where you go on the thing and you have zero gravity, which is always a lot of fun. And he's also the chairman and co-founder of the Rocket Racing League, as well as the co-founder and director of Space Adventures, which is basically brokering launches of private citizens to the International Space Citizen. So if any of you guys want to go, it's only $50 million, and I'm sure he'll be more than happy to tell you a little about it. But literally, I swear to God, it was the most remarkable. Out of the 6 people in the world that have went to space privately, 3 of them were at the house this day, and like one of the guys was one of the founding principals of Microsoft. It was totally unbelievable. It took me, I know, Peter, I've pestered you, but I don't know, 8 or 10 phone calls, text, and he literally flew all the way back just to get here for this. I just want to say thank you. I don't know where there he is, right behind me. Thank you so very much. Seriously, let's give him some love. Appreciate you being here. Thank you so very much. Guys, come on, we can do better than that. Give it up for Peter. Come on now.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, everybody. So I'm going to talk to you actually in 3 different parts about 3 subjects that I'm passionate about, that I think are extraordinary forces in the world. And I'm going to try and move it along so we can really have a dialogue about these things. So let's jump right in. The very first thing, 3 years ago, I co-founded a university called Singularity University up in Silicon Valley. And with Ray Kurzweil, partnered with our founding partners are Google and Cisco and Nokia and Kauffman Foundation, Autodesk, ePlanet Ventures. And this university is focused on teaching people about exponential technologies. So the first part of this is something that I think all of you need to really understand about the world we're in. It's called goodbye to linear thinking. So let's kick this off. So the human race evolved over the last 150,000 years. And if you think about the conditions under which your brain has evolved as a human, the world that we lived in 100,000 years ago, 150,000 years ago, even 20,000 years ago, was what I call local and linear. What that means is that everything that happened that affected your life happened within a day's walk. When something happened on the other side of the planet, you didn't know about it, you didn't care about it. And it didn't matter. You lived in a local world. And it was a linear world, meaning that the life of your great-great-grandparents, your life and your children's life and their children's life didn't change generation to generation. Everything was the same. Fast forward to today. We're living in a world today that's exponential and global. Something happens in China, Korea, Japan, it affects us a minute later. Exponential, the life of your grandparents and your parents and you and your children is changing at such a rate that it's inconceivable for people to understand what life would be like a generation from now. Very different thing, but remember, your brain evolved to understand local and linear, but the world today is exponential and global. And you have to remember that your innate reactions and thinking, because of the design of your brain, is local and linear. What does that mean? On this curve, you see a red line, and that red line is linear. It's the way that we as humans think and react. We make linear projections. I'll come to this in a second. But the yellow line is the exponential technical world we're living in. And because of the difference there, the stress between the rapid growth of companies and our inability to predict where these things are going causes disruptive stress. What does that mean? Billion-dollar companies go out of business overnight. From publishing to record to print to digital film or to film, no matter what it is. And billion-dollar companies come out of no place. Literally, you're going from zero to YouTube being sold for $1.6 billion to Google in 18 months, or $0 to $6 billion offer on Groupon in under 2 years. Extraordinary creative energy. Never before have we seen these kind of velocities. And what's driving that is a series of exponential technologies that are changing our world and giving you as individuals the power to do what only governments or large corporations could do before. Today, you or a small group of folks can affect 1 billion people if you so desire. Never before have we had this kind of power. So what are those technologies? AI, robotics, 3D printing, molecular genetics, nanomaterials, quantum computing, ubiquitous sensors. These are fields that are growing, doubling on orders of timescales of months to a year or two. So underpinning all of this is something called Moore's Law, which hopefully you all have heard about. It's the concept that a computer doubles in its processing speed every roughly year to 18 months. And if you remember nothing out of this presentation, look at this graph. On the left side is a log curve. On the bottom is a 100-year timeline. Now, an exponential function where things are doubling, typically an exponential curve, on a log curve is a straight line. The fact that this is curving upwards means that the speed at which things are growing exponentially is itself growing exponentially. So if you feel like things are getting faster in your life, they are. The other thing is, these are historic points of the speed of a computer for the average $1,000 laptop. And what's important to note is that over the last 100 years, this curve has been relatively smooth through wars, through peacetime, through great times, recessions, and depressions. This curve is generated by faster computers building faster computers, independent of what's going on in the world. The reason I point that out is if you believe it's been pretty consistent, the question is, will it be continuing in this way? And if you believe the curve is likely to continue, which I do, and this has been generation after generation of technologies going from literally a relay to a vacuum tube to a transistor to integrated circuits, now going to three-dimensional integrated circuits. If you project it forward, what does that mean? Well, last year, the average $1,000 laptop computed at 10 to the 11th cycles per second. 100 billion calculations on your computer at home in a second. It's pretty good. Fast forward another 13 years to 2023, and the average $1,000 laptop is going to compute at the rate of the human brain, 10 to the 16th cycles per second. That's the computational capability of your optical and auditory cortex as it does pattern recognition. So what does that mean when your computer calculates at the average speed of a human mind? But wait, there's still more. 25 years later, the average $1,000 laptop is computing at the rate of the entire human race. So we're in for some drastic and radical change, far more than we've seen before. So what does exponential growth feel like? This is the university up at Silicon Valley, right in the center of Silicon Valley that we started. And Ray Kurzweil and I and my friend Salim Ismail, who's in the back, started this university to create a place where you could come and understand the impact of exponential technologies on your life, your work, your industry. We actually run two programs. We run a graduate program for 80 graduate students. Over 2,000 people apply from 50 countries around the world, 80 get in. And we run executive programs, 4-day and 7-day executive programs, where you can come and really get an understanding of what's in the lab today and coming to market in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years in AI, robotics, computing, networks, human-machine interface, biotech, bioinformatics, nanomaterials, all the things which are going to create billion-dollar companies and destroy billion-dollar companies and change every single aspect of your life. And if you don't know what's coming, you will be blindsided. If you do know what's coming, at least you'll have the chance to perhaps take advantage of it. So, what does exponentials feel like? It feels like cell phone penetration in Africa, going from 2% in 2000 and growing to over 70% by 2013. And what does a billion new minds coming online feel like? We're going to have a billion new people entering the internet over the next couple of years. So what are they going to consume? What are they going to provide? What kind of market are they going to be? Because if you don't realize, it's an extraordinary marketplace. A marketplace that demands resilient, low-cost products that will change our marketplace. So, if I took 30 linear steps from this end of the room, 1, 2, 3, I end up 30 meters away. But what does exponential growth feel like? If I took 30 exponential steps, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, where do I end up? I end up doing 26 orbits around the Earth. So the fact that that inherent disconnect between, you can tell where 30 steps are. You can take a pretty good guess. I tell you where's 20 exponential steps or 30 or 40 exponential steps, you have no idea. We don't have the hard wiring in our brain. And because we don't understand these things, but the world has become exponential, you're in danger. And that's what you need to understand. An exabyte is 1 billion gigabytes. From the beginning of time till 2003, the world created 5 exabytes of digital information. Everything on the internet, anything you scanned. Last year, we created 5 exabytes in 2 days. In 2013, we're going to create 5 exabytes in 10 minutes. This is the YouTube generation. We're adding literally 35 hours of video on YouTube every minute. We're creating so much digital information that it is extraordinary and growing exponentially. So this is the final example of exponential growth to really hit you in the gut. So I heard this story from Chris Martenson, and he said, I want you to imagine that you're at the Ohio Stadium, and for some reason, somebody's abducted you and handcuffed you to the top row, 136 feet high. And as they're walking down to the middle of the field, they say, your life is in immediate danger. And you're going, what do you mean? You're trying to fiddle your handcuffs. The person takes out an eyedropper and drops 1 cubic centimeter of water, 1 cc of water into the field and says, it's going to double every minute, and your life is in immediate danger, and leaves. Okay? 10 minutes go by, you see nothing on the field. 20 minutes, you see a small puddle in the middle of the field. You're not worried. You're trying to get your handcuffs off. 30 minutes, you see a very thin film on the surface of the field down below. 40 minutes, you can barely see the shimmers, a few inches. 43 minutes, there's a foot. You're 135 feet above that. You don't care. You're just trying to leave and find this guy and give him payback. 50 minutes later, it's a third full. 3 minutes later, you're dead. Exponentials sneak up on you in a way that we don't expect. They topple industries or create industries. So that's the first lesson. You got it? So let me pause there. I'll mention singularityU.org is the website. If you're interested in coming to one of our executive programs and really getting an understanding of what exponentials feel like, what companies in the Valley are taking advantage of 3D printing and AI and robotics to build the next billion-dollar companies, you can go to singularityU.org. You can find out more about it. A question or two about this subject before I go to the next one?
Put the web address back up for a second.
Sure. It's, can we put the slide up again? It's singularity, the word, u.org. And my email I'll give you at the end is just peter@xprize.org, and I have that in the last slide. So we can come back to this again, but I want you guys to feel and understand this is going on in the world today, and if you don't get it, you're missing out something very important. I mean, those of you who are authors are seeing the entire authoring industry change overnight, the film industry and so forth. You're in the midst of feeling that, but expect it to continue to grow at a far more rapid rate. Can't wait till one of those first AIs start writing books. So I'd like to take you to my next subject I want to mention today. This is a quick point on a book that Simon & Schuster will be coming out that I'm writing in Q1 of 2012 called Abundance. So we're living on a world which has 7 billion growing to 9 billion individuals. And I posit to you that these next 20 to 30 years are a period of magical time where we are going to create a world of absolute abundance. How many folks hear about water wars and the world is going to hell? How many folks actually think that the world is worse off now than it was 10 years ago? Raise your hand. How many folks think that the world is a better place today than it was 10 years ago? Well, that's good. The majority of people think we're in a worse off situation. You have to realize that the human brain, again, going back to the function, physical structure of the brain, we have this thing called the amygdala, which evolved as the danger sensor. So when something comes into your eyes and your ears, it automatically gets split into two parts. It goes to your cortex, where you process the information, and goes to your amygdala, which is looking for any kind of danger. And so we have a desire to see danger. You put up a beautiful woman and a fire, and you'll struggle for a microsecond, but you'll be looking at the fire. Because, and it's sick, I know, but the fact of the matter is, we have learned to filter for danger first. Because it was an evolutionary trait that kept us alive. When you see a rustle in the bush, 99% of the time it's wind, 1% it might be a tiger, but your brain automatically thinks tiger. Because that concern would keep you alive. So ultimately, the news is 95 or 99% bad news because that's what gets our attraction. That's what gets our attention. So I believe that we're living into a world of abundance. And if you look at the world 100 years ago compared to today, to go from Boston to Chicago took a month's wage. Now it's a half-day wage. A 3-minute phone call was 19 hours. It's free now if you're on Vonage. Electricity, lighting, all of these things have gotten cheaper and cheaper. If you look at poverty in the United States, which I think is below the $22,000 for a family of 4, 99% of the people under the poverty level have electricity, water, flushing toilets, 95% have a television. I love this. 70% have a car and air conditioning. For God's sakes, the richest people in the world 100 years ago didn't have this stuff. And now, if you're impoverished, you have these things. You're living the life of a king. But yet we call this poverty. It's not poverty. Maybe it's a little bit of hardship. It's not poverty. But there are parts of the world that have poverty. We'll talk about that. This is a table setting from the days of Napoleon. And there's this great story that Napoleon gathered the kings and queens from around the world for this succulent dinner in the 1840s. And for his local noblemen, he put silver plates out. And for the senior noblemen, he put gold plates out. But for the kings and queens from around the world, he put out aluminum plates. Aluminum, back in the 1840s and 50s, was the most valuable metal on the planet. How many folks knew that? It's the third most abundant element on Earth, but it's bound in something called bauxite. And it was so hard to remove the aluminum, the pure metal aluminum from bauxite, that only small amounts existed. It was so precious and so rare. Something so abundant as aluminum atoms were rare in their pure form. And then we created some forms of electrolysis that use technology to extract aluminum, so we make aluminum cans and aluminum foil. And you throw it away not thinking about it now, because technology took something which was truly abundant and made it functionally abundant. So do you have that concept of technology and how that does that? Now let's look at abundance. And I define the terms that I think of as abundance. Abundance in communication, in energy, in water, in food, in resources, education, healthcare. I mentioned earlier cell phone penetration in Africa. Do you know that someone in Africa on a cell phone today has better telecom capability than the President of the United States did 20 years ago? Think about it. They do. They are living in a world of communication abundance. If they're on Google, they've got more knowledge at their fingertips than the President of the United States did 15 years ago. Incredible. Energy. We have lots of energy, tons of energy. Do you know that on the Earth's surface, more solar energy lands here in 1 hour than the human race consumes an entire year? Put a different way, we have 6,000 times more energy that hits the Earth in solar on the surface of the Earth than the human race uses. Energy is abundant, it's just not converted to usable form. Just like aluminum was abundant, right, and not converted to usable form yet. But what's going on that's interesting is that solar production is growing at 30% a year. We're at 1% now, but exponential doublings, in 18 years, we can meet 100% of our needs with solar. What's interesting, a couple years later, we've got twice as much energy. A couple years later after that, we've got 4 times and 8 times and 16 times as much energy. What do we do on this planet with 16 times more energy than we consume? One thing is provide abundant, free, clean drinking water to the world. We hear about water wars. Oh my God, we're going to be fighting over water. My God, when Carl Sagan looked back at the Earth, it was a pale blue dot. We are living on a water planet. We have lots of water on Earth. The problem is that 97.3% is salt water, bound with salt, just like aluminum was bound with bauxite. Lots of energy. Desalination is easy. All the water you want for all the functions you want. We live in this myopic view of these scarce resources, but we are living in a world of abundant resources. Food and nutrition, we're going to go from evolution by natural selection to evolution by intelligent direction, where we can create foods that are far more nutritious, far quicker growing. I'll just mention in this slide, going back to sort of the thinking we do at Singularity University and looking at the upside, the bright side of these technologies, is that, in the 90s, computers and mobile phones created the billion-dollar companies. The internet and social media, e-commerce. This next decade is a decade for biotech and ubiquitous networks, and then AI and robotics and 3D printing and nanotechnology. And those technologies are the technology that will give us a world of absolute abundance. We're the biggest markets on the planet. The markets that will create billion-dollar industries, $100 billion, trillion-dollar industries, are the markets that will help give us all a world of abundance, not a life of luxury, but a life of opportunity. So let me go to the third part of the presentation. Which is the notion that if you as an individual and people around the world have this tremendous power at their fingertips, what are they going to do with it? Where do you focus them? So I want to tell you very quickly my story about X Prize because I want to share this story with you. And my philosophy in life is that the best way to predict the future is invent it yourself. And the fact of the matter is that we all can invent the futures we want, and more than ever we have the technology to do that. And the second point I've realized is you get what you incentivize. When you incentivize your community, your world, your business, your family to do the right things, you get the results. And if you're getting the wrong results, it's because you're incentivizing those wrong results. So my dream, my passion since I was a kid was to fly into space. And I've started 15 companies now, from sending people to zero-G, to rocket racing, to orbital spaceflight, to suborbital flight, to open up this industry. And it was this guy that got me started down that road, Charles Lindbergh, who in 1954 won a Pulitzer Prize for his book, The Spirit of St. Louis. And I had no idea that he crossed the Atlantic in 1927 to win a prize. I thought he just woke up one day and decided to fly east and landed in Paris. But no, there was a guy, a Frenchman, Raymond Ortegue, who was born in Paris, grew up in New York, and said, I want to get people between my new land and my old land. And he offered up a prize for $25,000 in 1919. People laughed at him. Impossible, cannot be done, crazy. But in fact, 8 years later, in 1927, 9 different teams had spent $400,000 to try and win this guy's $25,000 prize. And I'm making notes in the margin of the book going, holy shit, that's amazing. 16 times the prize amount, and you don't pay anybody but the guy who pulls it off? That's great. And the most likely guy to do it, Admiral Byrd, who had flown the first to the North Pole, he crashes on takeoff at Roosevelt Field because he had overweighted his airplane with champagne in China so he could celebrate when he lands in Paris. Like they wouldn't have champagne in China and Paris. But this guy, Lindbergh, does it. And when he makes his trip, 33 and a half hours later, he becomes the most famous human on the planet. We still know his name. But something else happened, which was amazing. The year that he decided to fly, beginning of 1927, the number of passengers in the United States buying tickets to fly were 6,000. The year after he flew, 1929, 180,000, a 30-fold increase in the market. Why? Why did that happen? And the realization, oh my God, this guy's dramatic demonstration changed people's perception of aviation forever. He made it cool, he made it exciting, he made it useful, he made it sexy. And he changed the paradigm. And the markets followed. They go, wow, I'm going to do that for spaceflight. So I started researching prizes all over the place. I learned about the Longitude Prize. The British Admiralty gave it out. It was won by this guy, a watchmaker. Now you have to remember, when the British Admiralty put out this prize in the 1700s, the people who put the prize up were astronomers, because they were sure an astronomer was going to figure out how to tell the longitude by looking at the stars, because they were the smartest dudes on the planet back then. But it wasn't an astronomer. It was a tinkerer, a watchmaker, a guy who had no formal education, who came up with these watches that were accurate enough at sea, and they refused to pay the guy the money because they were so sure the experts, the astronomers, were going to figure it out. And so I learned a lesson there, that sometimes the expert is not the guy or the gal. In fact, the expert's the person who can tell you exactly how it can't be done. And sometimes it's a person from completely outside the field who goes, well, why can't you do it this way? Well, I guess you can. And that's called a breakthrough. So the question was still, how am I going to get myself into space? So the idea came up by the time I had finished the last page of the book. I'm going to create a prize. $10 million was enough money to attract the entrepreneurs, but not the Boeings and the Lockheeds. Right? I wanted entrepreneurs figuring out how to do this for a fraction of the dollar. I wanted them worrying about new ways to make this happen. You had to have a privately funded team, so you worried about every penny you spent. I wanted these vehicles to have 3 people on board, not one person. So at the end of the competition, they could go into paying business with a pilot and 2 paying passengers, or an autopilot and 2 very brave passengers. 100 kilometers we defined officially as space, but you had to do it twice. You had to go up to 100 kilometers, come back down, and within 2 weeks, do it again with the same ship. That meant reusability. That would be a change. That would be a breakthrough. So, incredibly, I went and asked for money, couldn't find it. I said, to hell with it, I'm going to launch this prize anyway. I went up on stage in St. Louis, under the arch, and announced the $10 million prize. The problem is I had no money. and I had no teams competing. What I did have was the realization that if I can announce a prize above the line of super credibility, maybe I could create the future I wanted. So in our minds, we have this line of credibility that we automatically assess everything we see, every conversation we have, and we say, is this credible or not? If we think it's incredible, we dismiss it out of hand. If we think it's credible, we consider it, and then a person loses or gains our credibility. And then there's this line of super credibility. And if you announce your idea above this line of super credibility, you're golden. People believe it right away. So on stage with me, I had not one astronaut, but 20 astronauts. I had the head of NASA and the head of the FAA next to me. And I had the Lindbergh family there. And so when I announced this $10 million prize, it was front page around the world. No one asked, do you have the money? Do you have any teams? I then spent the next 5 years pitching this. And I said, who wouldn't want to pay this? You pay after someone pulls it off. Pretty sweet deal. And everyone said, well, isn't someone going to die? And can anybody really do it? And why isn't NASA doing this? You know, I pitched Richard Branson a dozen times. I pitched Fred Smith. Finally, this couple, Hamid and Anusha Ansari. Anusha and Hamid were born in Tehran, moved to the US, became very successful entrepreneurs, had sold their last company for $1 billion. And one day I was reading in Fortune magazine about this woman, Anusha Ansari. I have to admit, I wasn't married back then. It was Fortune's 40s wealthy women under 40. And it says in her bio, her dream was to fly on a suborbital flight into space. And I read that line like 3 times. And I made it my commitment to track her down. But she had done an asset sale of her company. No one was still there. I finally found somebody. I mean, I was dialing nonstop. I tracked her down vacationing in Hawaii for the last 2 months. FedExed the package to her. It was her first meeting when she got back, and she agreed on the spot to fund the prize. 5 years later. And believe me, that was stress. Thank you. So, as a result, we had 26 teams enter this competition from 7 countries. They spent $100 million to try and win this $10 million prize. And this is the winning vehicle on October 4th, 2004, not far from here in the Mojave Desert. Spaceship One, suspended below White Knight 1. Anybody in the audience at that flight? Thank you for coming. We had about 30,000 people who came from around the world. Here's the vehicle under power, burning laughing gas and tire rubber as the fuels. Not your traditional propulsion system. Here it is at altitude. Any pilots in the audience here? 1, 2, okay. So the end number on this airplane, November 328 Kilo Foxtrot, is 328,000 feet or 100 kilometers altitude, which I thought was pretty cool. And after, here we are on the ground, the winning moment. On the left there are the Ansari family. Next to me is Paul Allen, who had funded, next to him, Burt Rutan and Brian Binney. And that week, Richard Branson swoops in and licenses the winning technology of this vehicle to go and create Virgin Galactic. Pretty good. 10 billion media impressions worth $120 million for the Ansari family, who didn't really want the publicity. We made the front page of Google, which was pretty cool. Hooked up to our servers, almost took down our website. The winning vehicle is hanging in the Air and Space Museum, right above the Apollo 11 capsule, next to the Spirit of St. Louis. And that was, thank you. That was an amazing, talk about a dream come true. What I'd like to do is show you a short 1-minute video, if we get audio up, of what that winning moment was like. We're announcing today something called the X Prize, a $10 million contest to privately build a spaceship that's able to carry 3 individuals, fly to 100 kilometers altitude, and do that twice inside of 2 weeks.
I have never been myself as creative as I have eyeballing this goddamn prize.
Hello and welcome to Mojave here in the high desert of California on this incredible day. Now you are going to witness history in the making.
Release arm fire.
The Ansari X Prize inspired international competition, drove regulatory reform, and made history.
The X Prize for $10 million.
It ignited a
prize.
personal spaceflight revolution.
Pretty cool. Thank you. So now there's a industry. Virgin Galactic is one company that you can buy a seat for $200,000. It's a suborbital flight, very different from an orbital flight, which does now. We have 3 seats available at $45 to $50 million apiece. In the next 3 years, we partner with the Russians through Space Adventures. You're up there for 10 days versus 3 minutes. So the price difference between 150,000, 200,000, and 45 million, believe me, it's worthwhile. The hallmarks of a great competition, whether it's an X Prize or it's a competition that you're running inside your organizations or your nonprofits, really is you can leverage the purse 10 to 40 times. You only pay the winner. Rather than backing a single solution, you back an entire field, and you encourage non-traditional breakthrough ideas. So this was the leverage we got. We had $2.5 million from St. Louis, allowed us to raise the $10 million from the Ansari family. It drove $100 million in team expenditures. There's been about $1.25 billion spent and invested in this personal spaceflight market since then. On the heels of that, we built an incredible board of trustees, some folks I'm very proud of, from Larry Page and Eric Schmidt, as a major benefactor. Jim Cameron just joined our board. Craig Venter, the first guy to sequence the human genome. Ray Kurzweil, Ratan Tata, the major industrialist in India. Elon Musk and Jim Giannopoulos, the chairman of Fox. We built a board of people who are really looking to change the world in a big and amazing way, and work with us to set bold objectives and incentivize people around the planet and say, I don't care where you're from, where you went to school, you solve this problem, you win $10 million. So we're developing prizes in education, global development, in life sciences, energy, environment, and exploration. One of the prizes that we ran with Progressive Insurance was for a new generation of 100-mile-per-gallon equivalent cars. 136 vehicles around the world entered. These are the finalists. The top 3 vehicles got from 102 to 187 miles per gallon equivalent, a new metric to measure electric versus fuel. A ton of publicity once again. With Google, we have a $30 million Google Lunar X Prize. And all you have to do to win this prize is build a robot and land it on the surface of the moon, send back photos and videos, rove a half a kilometer and send back more photos and videos. It is so valuable, NASA matched it with $30 million of contracts. So there's $60 million up for grabs. We now have 29 teams around the world building these lunar rovers, which will be orders of magnitude cheaper than the Soviet Union did and the US, only two countries that have been to the moon. Remember the BP oil spill? So in May, June last year, when it seemed to be going on and on and on and on, people started asking, what are you going to do about it? Peers complain, what are you going to do about this? And so Cameron had just joined our board, and he said, really should do a flash prize. Let's do something really quick to change this dynamic. We thought about a prize for capping it, and we realized that the technology for cleaning up these spills had not changed in 20 years since the Exxon Valdez. In fact, the equipment being used was the same equipment as used in the Exxon Valdez. And we said, there's the opportunity. So I put out a call to our board and our benefactors, and Wendy Schmidt, Eric's wife, and who heads the Schmidt Foundation, stepped up and said, I'll do it. She funded the purse and the operations, and we launched the Wendy Schmidt Oil Cleanup Challenge, which is challenging teams to reinvent how we clean up oil spills. And we have had 400 teams around the planet pre-register, down to 37 fully registered. This summer, the top 10 teams go head-to-head, and Shell is committed to taking the top 3 finalists into the marketplace. So we're literally going to go from complaining about a problem to having 3 solutions in the market within 18 months. So where are we going next? We're looking at 30 or 40 different prize concepts. These are the top 3 that are in production right now. You might have read of this. We announced this week that with Qualcomm, we're developing something called the Tricorder X Prize. It's only in development right now, but this will be a device, a mobile platform that you can cough on, you can do a finger blood prick, you can speak to it, it's on the net, and it will diagnose you better than a group of 10 board-certified doctors. So the technology exists now. Believe me, I'm a medical doctor by training. I spent 4 years at Harvard getting a degree. I've forgotten all of it. And I know that today the amount of technology and information that a physician has to deal with cannot possibly be handled by the human mind. But the technology exists to put this kind of capability in your person's hand, so whether you're a mom at home wondering whether you should go to the emergency room or just have an aspirin and drink some fluids, or you're in the middle of Africa where there are no doctors for days' walk, and this technology can upload to the cloud that there's a pandemic coming out. It's transformative. It will reinvent medicine. We have a major auto company that we're developing the Autonomous Auto X Prize. Imagine a dynamic race course. Things are popping up, popping out, conditions, speed limits are changing constantly. And on that track, we put the best human drivers, the Formula One, the NASCAR, the New York taxi cab drivers. And we race them around. And the same track, we put the best robotic vehicles. And the year in which the robotic vehicle can beat the best human drivers, it wins the Autonomous Auto X Prize. And that year, we will start to save millions of lives, billions of gallons of fuel, and billions of hours of wasted time on the roads. The final area we're looking at with a company called Tri-State is called the carbon capture and reuse. And we're flipping the model here. So Tri-State's putting up a facility, a coal plant, with a large set of real estate, which they're going to be putting effluent pipes from the smokestack under pressure, high CO2 and high heat. And the team that is able to capture 80% or more of the CO2 and create the most valuable products that make it worthwhile to capture the CO2 and make it a profit center for the coal plants will win the competition. To make it in their best interest, not a cost, but a profit center to extract the CO2 and reuse it. So look for that one coming out soon too. So we're living in a day and age where each of you have the power to affect 1 billion people. Exponential technology is going to transform our world, give us a world of abundance. The question is, what are you going to use that technology to do? And how do you want to incentivize your community to go and solve the world's grand challenges? Thank you so much. Thank you. Whoa! Larry, do you have time for a few questions?
Okay. Did you take questions? Yeah.
First question here. Young lady. I remember.
Mike. Thanks.
Okay, once again, I think Peter's pure genius. I think he motivated.
as well.
He said he also works with kids, right, in the programs. I met with a group of doctors about 2 years ago at Hebrew University, came to the United States, and I helped support them with some of the docs and whatever. And they were showing us something similar to the tricorder, that they have one where they go out in middle of Africa and whatever, and they are able to do some diagnostic work. So there is something, I think, that exists, right?
So there are hundreds of small companies around the world that have different parts and pieces. What
Right.
we do is we set a very bold, objective goal that's beyond what the technology is today to force them to go and do that and deploy it and start using it. The fact that we don't have it yet, and it's either too expensive or has limited functionality, and so the goal is really, we're in the middle of designing that prize right now. And when we figure out what is the state that exists and what's the vision of a state we'd like to exist, and we'll incentivize those teams to work and accelerate the development there. But ultimately, this should be in every home and every village around the planet.
Right, but they do
They have parts and pieces of it.
Okay, so they have some that do some diagnostic work, is what you're saying. Okay.
Please, yes.
How do you guys come up with these ideas? I mean, you sit around, have some drinks, and then you...
We go to kindergartens, and in all honesty, we have something called our Visioneering event. We have a group of benefactors called our Vision Circle, and these are folks like Ratan Tata and Larry Page and Sergey Brin and others who have donated capital, or are seed holders, if you would. About 15 to 20 of those individuals. We have our board of trustees, and we bring in CEOs from top industries and philanthropists, folks like Jeff Skoll, and we spend 2.5 days brainstorming what are the world's biggest problems, where should a breakthrough exist that doesn't exist today, and then what would be an incentive competition that would cause that to come into existence. And then what we do is we have if you go to the X Prize website, which is xprize.org, you can see a whole slew of ideas. And then we go out and we find philanthropists who would be willing to underwrite the development of the prize, which is about $750,000 to develop the prize concept. Once the prize is developed, we then go and find a benefactor, like the Ansari family, like Progressive Insurance, that will put up the purse and the operations money and will name it in their honor. So rather than someone putting their name on another building or whatever it might be, it's would you put the money up to drive a breakthrough that will serve 1 billion people?
I think your concept is so breakthrough that, I mean, this group in here, I mean, this is fertile ground right here, but it creates a whole new level of thinking. And that's what turns me on. If that word could get out to the general population, I'm telling you, it would create the next level of intelligence.
No, thank you very much. I will say that the idea is an old idea, right? I've revitalized it, the Longitude Prize, the Orteig Prize. I mean, I think what we've done as an organization, we have a group of 50 people here in Los Angeles that work at the X Prize Foundation, an amazing group of dedicated folks. And our really is to bring best practices and really curate these prizes through to a successful win, and really realizing there are amazing entrepreneurs out there who want to be significant on the planet and have great ideas. That would never make it through the traditional venture capital or peer review NIH system, and this gives them an alternate platform for their ideas to come to light. Yeah. Thanks. Please.
Could you create a 20-minute video like Inconvenient Truth that's called the Illuminating Effect, that is a verbal and visual metaphor for the accelerated reversal of norms that we could scale so that there is a global awareness of exactly what you said. So like Inconvenient Truth, we're taking this movement and accelerating it exponentially.
So I thank you for that. I'm hopeful that when the book publishes, it will be, I want to create a vision of the future that people can rally around, that we can build and should be building a world of abundance where every person on the planet can have a life of possibility. That's don't need to spend their time foraging for water, food, and energy, that those things will be available, and education, and healthcare. The technology is going to enable that kind of a life. And now the question is, when you've got these brilliant minds on the planet enabled in this way, what can they do? What can they contribute? I think it's an amazing amount of stuff. Sir.
Videotaping, so it's more polite to actually be on the mic. Name's Joe Polish. I think what you're doing is unbelievably amazing. I'm also Richard Branson's largest fundraiser in the world, so I spend a lot of time with him, and it's just like him to go and snag a technology like that. And I was at the spaceship. Yeah, he is. It's kind of. I have a kid that I've actually been funding that wants to be the youngest guy in space. He's been working on it for 2 years, devoted his whole life to it, and he knows more about space than anyone I've ever met. How do we make that happen? If there's anything that could be done with you, that would be a godsend.
So how old is he now?
He's 20.
So, one of the things we've talked about, so Space Adventures, what we do is we have a relationship with the Russians, with the capitalist Russians, and so we represent them for private seats. We have 3 seats available to go to orbit, and the price tag is between $45 to $50 million, depending on a few parameters.
Yeah, I'm
It's
trying to get
expensive.
it somehow sponsored for this guy because he kind of knows that, and so it's like, how the hell do you make that happen
Sure.
or bypass it?
And of course, going on a suborbital flight gets you officially into space, and that's Space Adventures partnered with Armadillo. It's $105,000 on a Space Adventure seat versus $200 in the Virgin, and you see the price competition starting already. And ultimately, the price for suborbital flight to go into space, if you look at the cost of the fuel, is on the order of about $5,000 to $10,000, which means that we should be seeing seats eventually at $25K a piece over time as the vehicles become reusable and vibrant.
Who wants to go for 25 grand? We're all going for 25 grand.
But I leave that right now. These businesses are young, and they're not charities yet. But one of the ideas that I did have with Gene Cernan, who was the last human on the moon, right, December 1972, is why not have a global competition for the youngest person in space? You have to be 18 or older to enter, and maybe you had to have had a minimum of a XYZ score in high school to enter. So we incentivize people to want to go and become cool. And then that's, for me, the way to do it. It wouldn't be for one person, but it would be the notion that having the youngest person in space would incentivize potentially a generation of scientists and engineers, and getting the traditional Coke or Pepsi to sponsor that could be a possibility.
Would you be interested in driving something like that or being involved in it? Or?
So we've taken some shots at that in the past, and it's never easy. The economics of doing because it's a real $50 million, and there are very few $50 million sponsorship gigs out there.
Okay.
But
cool.
if you found a sponsor who wanted it, absolutely, of course.
All right. Is this dude a badass or what? This is great. It's fantastic.
Amazing.
Thank you, Joe.
So,
just a quick question to the point of how you guys come up with the ideas. Have you guys thought about crowdsourcing those ideas? So
We have and we will.
Okay.
We are working on that right now. We do have people lobbing ideas into the internet, but the fact of the matter is I want to really turn that on when we have a way of actually reviewing and evaluating lots of ideas and not frustrating people who throw ideas in and say, did you read it or not? Because we're going to have some... I mean, the community is amazing out there. I have someone I know who's dying from an inoperable glioblastoma on a brainstem, and I tweeted yesterday asking if anybody knew of any breakthrough treatments. And I got like 60 responses of people recommending new techniques, and it blew me away. And if you think about abundance in healthcare, that's the world that we're creating, where collaboration can really bring the world's knowledge to your fingertips easily. So there are brilliant ideas out there, and we do want to definitely do that. We will.
Yeah, and one of the other thoughts I just wanted to put at you that you might find of value is I can see this becoming like a brand or something kind of like TED, where everything is, though we're global, we're still local. And you've reinvigorated the prize model, and why not have these types of competitions even on local levels within cities across the world? So that we
Agreed.
can...
We're looking at and working on will ultimately be a platform that allows for philanthropists to put up smaller level prizes that will be run in that fashion, sort of a Kickstarter combination with prize model.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
hey
Sir.
there. So the Race to the Top is an example of something in the education space. What other ideas for education? We've got a lot of educators here of different
Great.
forms.
Let me pitch you my idea and get some feedback. So 5 years ago, a guy by the name of Tom Vander Ark joined me worked for me as president of the X Prize Foundation. And he had just spent the last 8 years as the head of education at the Gates Foundation, giving away $3 billion. So Tom joined, and our first mission was, gotta do education. We spent a year and a half trying to figure something out and didn't. Really frustrating, really hard, right? The whole measurement. So finally, there's one idea that I'm excited about, and I've got a meeting in Silicon Valley next week with Anish Chopra, who's flying in to help pitch a bunch of philanthropists on this idea. So I need your help fine-tuning it. So the concept would be, I do believe that that gameplay can be an extraordinary platform. And I'm always looking for a competition has to be clear, objective, and measurable of what do you want to achieve. So for the first time, the notion would be, how about a competition where you pick some subject area, some level of math, some level of reading, language, whatever it might be, and you have to build a game that is effective addictive, and viral. What does that mean? Effective means that 80% of the people who play the game have learned the material. You cannot get to the end of the game without having learned the material. Addictive, meaning 80% of the people, the numbers can vary, who start the game finish the game. It's so addictive that you want to get to the end. It's fun. It's exciting. It's vibrant. You've played games like that before. And then viral, meaning you put out 1,000 games to 1,000 users, and they are incentivized to get their friends to play because it's more fun for them if their friends are playing. And the first team that grows to 100,000 users. So the numbers have to be tweaked, but my goal would be to get hundreds or thousands of startups starting up, designing games like that, where it's a bunch of college kids trying to teach their younger brothers in junior high school biology through a gameplay. And I think that there are best practices we haven't yet learned, but once you can create that kind of a platform, it's free, and you've got abundant education. So that's one idea, and it's the one initially I'm pitching right now.
Love it.
Great, thank you. Last question, sir.
Peter, I just want to say that was the most annoying presentation of the whole week because you made me feel like a real slacker, so it was very aggravating. No, I'm just teasing you. You're awesome. Really quick, how did you get up there at St. Louis knowing you didn't have the money? How did you do that? Because I have to have all my ducks in a row, and I'm trying to figure out how your brain works so I can be more like you.
I had 2 board members resign on my decision.
Okay.
I had absolute confidence that this was fundable and doable, and it was no question. And by the time I hit the 200th CEO who said no, I was like, holy shit, this is not easy. But it was the right thing to do. And so there's nothing like burning your ships when you get to the shore. And that's what I basically had done. And believe me, after Columbia crashed and after 9/11, no one wanted to fund a spaceship prize. What are you, crazy?
Wow.
It got hard. Yeah. Lots of stories there. Folks, thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you.
Thank you.
Ladies, let's give it up. Come on, that was remarkable. Let's give it up. Come on now. So, as our tradition here at Sang, you've given to our community. What could we help you with, either personal or business? What's something that, I mean, I know, for example, me, I'm trying to refer business to you guys, so my goal is to keep on the lookout for billionaires and people that we know in our network that have money that might want to go to space.
So 2 things. One, Singularity University is very near and dear to my heart. Come to our executive program. Tell people about it. SingularityU.org. It is a transformative experience. We do a 4-day program for $7,500, and the 7-day program is $12K.
And we should take, maybe we take a whole bunch of us all at one time.
We have people who come through the program, and we have a Platinum Partners program, and we literally have about, we've had 10 people sign up over the last month at $150,000 to be able to come back every year. It is voted by them the best educational experience of their life. It is immersive. Our head of faculty, Dan Barry, is an expert in robotics. He's a 3-time shuttle astronaut, MD, PhD. You'll hear from me and Ray Kurzweil, and you will visit all the top Silicon Valley companies that are creating the future AIs and 3D printing and robotics and nanomaterial companies, and you'll literally see what the future looks like for the next 2, 5, 10 years that will change your life. So come to SU. The other thing is, if you know someone who would like to underwrite an X Prize or wants to at least fund the development of a prize area, because once a prize gets developed and it's really fleshed out with the whole business plan, all the materials, the capital comes along to put their name on the prize and do it. So I do this because I know that we can change the world and we can create the vision of the future we want. There's no question about that. So it's about us finding people to partner with to go and make that happen.
How much money is needed for that?
So when we underwrite an X Prize, we design the prize. It's a $750,000 grant. It funds a team for 6 months who actually write a business plan around that prize, which includes, by the way, coming up with a dozen prize concepts around solving that problem, like going from, I had one guy who had a heart transplant, had to wait 5 years, so he's thinking about, he probably won't do it, but he's thinking about an organogenesis, go from a skin cell to a transplantable heart, liver, lung. So you never, each of you have a spare parts kit, if you would, at the end of the day. But as part of that's an X prize for me, a really dramatic, bold prize that no question we can do it. It's about incentivizing people to go and do it. But we come up with the prize concepts, we write out the detailed plans, the public relations plan, the regulatory plan, the education plan. We launch high school level competitions that match these things, and the team recruitment plan, and basically the cost of running the prize. And so when we do that, we have a book of knowledge that we can go and then really move this forward. So for me, it's about creating X prizes and getting the meme out about Singularity U. And I hope to have a chance to meet you there.
Awesome. One other thing,
Yeah.
you were mentioning something about you bring the founders of Google and you have a whole brainstorming session. Do you guys ever have any sponsors or anything like that? Do you need sponsors of that?
We do bring in sponsors for that event.
And what's the starting levels of those?
At 100K.
Okay. So there's some of us in the room that might be willing to
And
do it.
we have on October 20th in Silicon Valley, we have our annual benefit. James Cameron and Wendy and Eric Schmidt are the co-chairs. October 20th, and please come, get a seat, buy a table. Come in and hear more. We're going to be unveiling the winners of the Wendy Schmidt Oil Cleanup Challenge.
How much is a table?
They range from 25, 50, and 75K. They're in that range.
Okay, how many seats?
I think it's 10 seats.
Who wants to go with me? I'm going. Who else wants to go? It's one. Who else? Just raise your hand. Stand up. Who wants to go? We'll just do it right now. One. Stand up if you guys want to go. Joe Polish. How much is what? Just 10. It's only $2,500. It's 25. 1, 2, 3. Who else wants to go? 4. Come on, let's fill up a table for him. Let's go. Guys, this is the most influential people on the planet. Okay, we'll buy the rest of the table. I'll take it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's give it up.
Thank you,
Barbara
guys.
Lazaroff. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate you very much. Amanda, did you get the notes on who's coming? Okay, I just have a couple announcements, then we'll send you to